My reborn son had never been close to me since he was a child. Gradually, I noticed something unusual. On the very day when I got the paternity test results, I was killed in a car accident and died on the spot. When I opened my eyes again, my son was pointing at the nanny and saying that he wanted to recognize her as his mother. I snickered. If you recognize her as your mother, you can't recognize me anymore. Our Zhuangzhuang has always been popular with the opposite sex since he was a little boy. There's no need to worry about finding a wife in the future. Wait for Grace to make you spare ribs tonight. Yeah, Grace, you're the nicest to me. I watched this scene of motherly love and filial piety in front of me coldly and just found it ridiculous. My son Toby, whose nickname is Zhuangzhuang, is in the 6th grade. On this day in my previous life, he lifted a little girl's skirt during the physical education class and beat the teacher. The head teacher called me directly. After learning about what had happened, I was so angry that I immediately asked him to apologize to the teacher. In my previous life, I was very strict with him. On that day, after taking him home, I threw him directly into the room and made him reflect on his mistakes by facing the wall. Instead, it made him develop a rebellious mentality towards me, while my husband Victor was indifferent to this. He was on a business trip outside and only knew to blame me for not teaching Toby well. He even praised the nanny Hannah highly. Later, I realized that they were the real family, and I was just an outsider. In this life, just after I opened my eyes and was sighing that heaven had given me another chance, I came home 2 minutes earlier and saw this scene. Is it delicious? Eat more. When that mean woman comes back later, she won't let you eat. Hannah was feeding Zhuangzhuang with a loving look on her face, and Toby was playing games on his mobile phone on the side, swearing one after another. If I had seen this scene before, I would definitely have flipped the table, but now, knowing the truth of the matter, I couldn't be bothered to meddle in other people's business. Grace, you're so nice to me. I wish you were my mother. Then I saw that Hannah's action of feeding paused for a moment, and her eyes became red. Oh. I really wanted to go up and tell Zhuangzhuang that she was his biological mother, and then drive them all out of the house. However, such punishment was too light. Since heaven had given me this opportunity, I would definitely make good use of it and make those who deceived me pay the price. I left silently and didn't come back until 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. Hannah was obviously dissatisfied with me. In my previous life, she came to our home as a confinement nanny not long after Toby was born. Toby had a very good relationship with her. Later, I just kept her at home until now. She suffered from back pain, and I even found a traditional Chinese medicine doctor to treat her. Now that I think about it, maybe it was because she didn't take good care of herself during the confinement period and left the root of the disease. Was Zhuangzhuang naughty? Hannah shook her head at me with blame in her eyes. To be honest, our Zhuangzhuang has been obedient since he was a child. It must be those shameless little girls at school who forced themselves on Zhuangzhuang, which led to this. Those teachers are really something. They claim to be graduates of famous universities. I think they're just covering up for that little girl. I looked Hannah up and down and couldn't help sneering in my heart. She was quite confident in her own son. You've really hurt Zhuangzhuang's heart by locking him up like this. Tisk tisk. The same argument as in the previous life. I pretended to be thinking, frowned tightly, and after a while, I gave in. All right, Zhuangzhuang is my son. I also feel bad for him in this situation. Has he eaten yet? I opened the door of Toby's bedroom and pretended not to see his action of hiding something. Before I could say anything, Toby immediately shouted. I don't want to see you. Get out, you bad woman. Chapter 2 Attitude Change. I was stunned for a moment when I stood at the door. Although I had expected such an outcome long ago, I still felt a bit sad in my heart. I walked over with an unfriendly look on my face. Before I reached the bed, Hannah rushed forward in one step and blocked in front of Toby. Zhuangzhuang is still young and doesn't know any better. Don't hit him, stay away from me. You're not my mother. I want Grace to be my mother. Get out. Before I could say anything, Toby had already started making a big fuss. Who said I was going to hit you? Sister Grace, don't talk nonsense. Zhuangzhuang didn't do anything wrong. Well, after reflecting on it all afternoon, I know I was wrong. I didn't even listen to Zhuangzhuang's explanation before making a judgment. I learned from the painful experience, pushed aside Hannah, who was stunned in front of the bed, and pulled Toby up. Alright, Zhuangzhuang, don't be angry with Mom anymore. Are you hungry? Sister Grace, hurry up and cook. What are you waiting for? As I said this, I put my arm around Toby's shoulder, looking like we were good buddies. I pretended not to see his greasy lips that hadn't been wiped after eating. Humph, that's more like it. Toby glanced at me sideways. I won't eat. Sister Grace has already fed me just now. Give me my phone back quickly. Toby looked so superior, but when Hannah heard this, her face suddenly changed, and she opened her mouth, looking anxious to explain something. Sister Grace, you're so considerate. Otherwise, it would be me who would feel bad if Zhuangzhuang was hungry. As I said this, I quickly took back all of Toby's electronic devices. I pushed aside Hannah, who was shocked. Seeing Toby's happy look, I was also in a good mood. After all, it's none of my business if he plays with his mobile phone until his eyes go blind in the future. Early the next morning, before I got up, I heard Toby shouting that he didn't want to go to school. I won't go. I won't go. I want to play at home. Going to school is so annoying. Give me my phone quickly. Zhuangzhuang, be good. That woman didn't know what got into her yesterday and let you out. Otherwise, you could have stayed at home for a few more days. Well, just listen to Grace and go to school. If you don't want to attend classes and don't like those teachers, you can just sleep. Hannah was telling Toby this, and I couldn't help but want to laugh when I heard it. She was really the biological mother. She cared more about the child than I did. I quickly tidied up my clothes and walked out. Zhuangzhuang, come to Mom. When Toby saw me, he just snorted coldly and sat motionless on the dining chair. I walked over and hugged him tightly. Good boy, if you don't want to go to school, then don't go. It's just asking for a day off. Mom will ask for leave for you. Today Mom will treat you and take you out to play. Toby looked at me in shock, then pursed his lips. Really? Do you really agree? Of course it's true. Mom has already realized her mistake yesterday. I was too strict with you before. From now on, Mom just wants to make it up to you. After I finished explaining and saw his happy look, I pretended to go back to my room to tidy up. Think about where you want to go, and Mom will book tickets in advance. Then I pretended to glance at my mobile phone. Oh dear, it won't work today. Your dad is on a business trip and asked me to go to the company. As soon as I said that, Toby's face immediately fell. Don't be unhappy. Let Grace take you there today. Next time Mom will definitely take you there. After saying that, Toby became happy again. I immediately transferred a sum of money to Hannah. As soon as they left, I immediately called someone to come and install surveillance cameras. I had suspected Victor for quite some time. In my previous life, I died before getting any evidence. In this life, I will definitely make them pay the price. Then I went to the company and checked on the company's situation. However, it didn't take long before Hannah called me and said that Toby had an accident. Chapter 3 Reward. When I arrived at the amusement park, I saw Toby being pinned to the ground by a middle-aged man with his neck in his grip. Toby was still constantly cursing at that man. The man was so angry that he slapped Toby twice directly. Hannah was jumping up and down anxiously on the side, with her clothes in disarray. It seemed that she had also gone through a fierce fight. It was the first time I saw Toby like this. Finally, someone taught Toby a lesson. I hid behind the crowd. Who would have thought that the next second Toby shouted, "Do you know who my mother is? I tell you, when my mother comes, she'll kill you all. Believe it or not, you'll be in big trouble." Hearing this, I quickly walked forward. I was afraid that if I was a step late, my image would be completely ruined by Toby. Cecilia, you're finally here. Hurry up and save Zhuangzhuang. Look at this damned man. Zhuangzhuang is almost hurt. Hannah grabbed me, as if she had finally found someone to rely on. I had already roughly understood what had happened when I was behind just now. Toby cut in line and started pushing and shoving with that kid. When the kid's grandma saw this, she wanted to go over to help, but Hannah pushed her to the ground. Then several people started fighting. That man was the kid's father. He had just bought some water and came over, and immediately subdued Toby. You're his mother. How did you teach your child? He has no manners at all. I tell you that I've already called the police. You must give me an explanation for what happened today. I immediately bent down to apologize, lowering my posture to the lowest. Brother, it's my child's fault in this matter. It's my mistake. I didn't teach him well. I can compensate. The child is still too young. Let's skip going to the police station. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. We will definitely correct it in the future. Why don't we go to the hospital first to see if the elderly and the child are okay? Humph, why are you apologizing? I'm not at fault at all. As soon as I finished speaking, Toby shouted out. I quickly signaled Hannah to take him home, then I took that family to the hospital and had a comprehensive examination. During that time, the police came to inquire about the situation. However, because Toby was still underage, I privately gave that man another sum of money. Only then was the matter settled. By the time I finished dealing with this matter, it was already nearly 6 o'clock. I returned home exhausted. As soon as I opened the door, I found that Victor had come back. The originally lively family of 3 fell silent instantly when they saw me come back. Hannah immediately stood up from the sofa, and Victor had a cold face, showing his dissatisfaction with me. Cecilia, how did you educate him? How could you let him be wronged outside? As parents, we should listen to what the child has to say first. The child also has his dignity. I was stunned for a moment, and then looked at Victor with a wronged look. Husband, I know that Zhuangzhuang was wrong today. But there were so many people at that time, and they even called the police. I could only apologize first. Zhuangzhuang was born after I carried him in my womb for 10 months. I'm the one who feels the most distressed when he's hurt. As I said this, I took out the latest game console. Look, this is a gift I bought for our son. He did a great job today. When he's bullied outside, he must fight back. I used to have problems with my education. Now I realize that not everyone in this world is good. I'm very pleased that our son has such a sense of resistance at such an early age. After saying that, I ignored Victor's surprised expression and handed the game console to Toby. Looking at his greedy face and the way he roughly opened the packaging box without even saying thank you, I'm waiting for the day when his life is completely ruined by games. Just when we were having dinner in the evening, our whole family was sitting at the dining table. I kept putting food on Victor's plate. Victor, look, Zhuangzhuang has grown up now. Shouldn't we consider having another child to accompany Zhuangzhuang? Chapter 4 Having a child. I looked at Victor expectantly. Just as I finished saying this, the sound of a plate falling came from the kitchen. Victor looked unnaturally at the kitchen. How could you be so careless? So clumsy. As he said this, he quickly ran to the kitchen. Before long, Hannah came out with him. Her little face was like pear blossoms bathed in rain, really pitiful. Didn't we agree before that we would only have Zhuangzhuang as our child? Why so suddenly? What about Zhuangzhuang? As he said this, he went to ask Zhuangzhuang, but Zhuangzhuang was only focused on playing games and didn't pay any attention to him at all. Go away. If you want one, then have one. It's none of my business. I'm not the one giving birth. It's so annoying. After saying that, he threw down his chopsticks and went back to his room with the game console. Then Victor also went to the study. I put down my chopsticks and just felt bored. And the following days, Toby stayed at home all the time. Occasionally, I could still hear the sound of his fighting in the game in his room in the middle of the night. Every time I saw him during the day, he was listless and always rubbed his eyes with his hands. After a few days, he started complaining that his eyes hurt. I said that I would take him to the hospital, but he was afraid that it would delay his game time and refused to go. I still felt sorry for him. When I learned that his eyes were uncomfortable, I immediately ordered a desktop gaming laptop for him so that he could play to his heart's content. On this day, while I was applying a facial mask, Toby suddenly told me that he wanted to go to school. I had to agree. However, in the 2 days since he went to school, he hasn't been peaceful at all. The teacher has complained to me every day, every time I apologized in person, and my image as a mother in his eyes suddenly became much taller. Sometimes he insisted on following me and didn't stick to Hannah anymore. I also established a good image of a mother among the neighbors. It was precisely because I had been tolerating Toby's small mistakes all the time that he mistakenly thought that no matter what mistakes he made, someone would cover for him. As a result, he became bolder and bolder. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The storm isn't fierce enough yet, now we still need a raging fire to completely burn him down. And this raging fire is coming soon. On this day, I was resting at home when there was a violent knock on the door. At that time, I was the only one at home. The door was being knocked loudly, and from time to time there were also some curses. I opened the door, and there was a middle-aged man standing outside. That man looked about my age, but his hair was already graying. The little girl beside him was even thinner, and her big eyes were full of fear. "You? This is Toby's home? Tell that little brat to come out. I'll skin him alive." As the man said this, he was about to rush and out. I quickly stopped him. "Toby is at school." "At what school?" "We just came here from the school." I was stunned for a moment. Toby had been going to school regularly these days. I was wondering why he was so obedient. It turned out that he had skipped school halfway. I asked, "This how your family educates him? You're his mother, right? How can you be parents like this? You can't even teach your child well. Look at my daughter. Look. Is your son even human?" The man lifted his daughter's clothes. When I saw the bruises on the girl's body, I couldn't even breathe for a moment. This was done by Toby. Don't think that just because your family is rich, you can do whatever you want. We may not have money, but we're not afraid of you either. I've already called the police. I must have an explanation for this matter. The man was shouting loudly at my doorstep. Before long, all the neighbors came out. I pinched my thigh hard, and my eyes immediately turned red. I lowered my head. Chapter 5 Testing. My son wouldn't do such a thing. I'm usually very strict with his education. Are you mistaken? How could he do such a thing? My husband has the final say in the family. Wait a moment. I'll call him. I was like a mother who couldn't accept that her son had done such a thing for the first time and called Victor in a bit of a fluster. Before long, the neighbors beside me started whispering. "This family, their son is a bully. Didn't you see how his mother was bullied just now? I really didn't expect this. I thought he was just a tyrant at home. I didn't know that he bullied his classmates at school too. That's because he wasn't disciplined well when he was young. You came later, so you don't know his grandmother. Tisk tisk tisk, she's the one who spoils her grandson to the sky." Alas, Cecilia didn't have an easy life before. I made 2 calls in a row, but Victor didn't answer. Just when I was about to give up, the elevator door opened, and that family of 3 walked out happily. I pretended not to see them and trotted forward to hold Victor's arm. "Husband, something serious has happened. Come and have a look." This man said that our son beat his daughter. When Victor heard this, his face immediately turned cold. He gave me a disgusted look, then he walked to the door and said rudely to the father and daughter, "My son has been with me all day today. I think you're here to blackmail us. Get out of here quickly, or I'll call the property management." The man was so emotional when he saw Toby that he rushed forward in one step and was about to hit him. Fortunately, Hannah protected him behind her, and Victor stepped forward to block the mother and son. I was left alone beside them, feeling embarrassed. Victor immediately asked Hannah to take Toby into the house. When Toby passed by the girl, he paused for a moment and lowered his head guiltily. When the man saw that Toby was about to enter the house, he immediately used brute force to break free from Victor. Victor threw a punch, and both of them fell to the ground. Fortunately, the neighbors nearby helped to separate them. "You can't leave, Toby. You can't leave, you little brat. You have the guts to do it but not the guts to admit it, right? I tell you that no one can leave today. What evidence do you have to prove that my son did it? You're slandering us maliciously. Do you know that? I'll see you." "I'm slandering? Your family relies on your wealth and power and has already silenced the teachers long ago. But I'm not afraid of you. The police will be here soon." The little girl was already scared to tears by this scene. It really tugged at my heartstrings when I saw her. At the same time, The neighbors around were in an uproar. What else can the Toby family argue about? I've always said that they spoil their child too much and something would happen sooner or later. Look, it's happened so soon. Exactly. They're still so confident. The girl has so many injuries on her body. It doesn't seem fake. Well, it's hard to say now. The Toby family is rich. We can't rule out that this man is here to blackmail them for money. The neighbors were talking one after another. Seeing this, Victor took out his mobile phone and called the property management. Before long, the property management staff arrived. What was unexpected was that the police came with them. The one in charge was Joyce, an old friend of my father's. The police quickly separated the two men. They knocked on the door and brought Toby out. Toby knew Joyce. As soon as he saw him, he immediately called me. Mom, save me. I don't want to go to prison. Mom, save me. And he threw himself at me and hugged me. Hannah's face froze. I ignored Toby and followed the police. The little girl was scared when she saw Toby. She was already crying, and now she was even more out of breath. I felt so sorry for her when I saw her, and at the same time, I was filled with guilt. Chapter 6. An accident. In my previous life, I was very strict with Toby. Although he didn't get along well with his classmates at school, he didn't go as far as beating his classmates. In this life, I've been too indulgent with him, especially recently. I've been spoiling him in every way. I originally wanted him to reap the consequences of his own actions, but I didn't expect that he would hurt his classmates. Our group was taken to the police station. School bullying incidents are a hot topic in society nowadays. The little girl's name is Luna. Toby has been leading others to bully her ever since he went back to school. The police station quickly set up a special task force. It seems that Victor and Hannah have known about this all along. Luna's father isn't causing trouble for the first time. He had already gone to the school when he first learned about this matter. Perhaps after the last incident, Victor had talked to the teachers. So this time, the teachers directly informed Victor. The moment he learned about this matter, he secretly donated a large sum of money to the school, and the school had already deleted the surveillance videos and so on. As for those eyewitnesses, they had already been taken care of. The families of those students who were involved in this matter were afraid of my family's power and didn't dare to say anything. Yes, it's my family's power. I was considered to have married beneath my station. Victor was just a penniless man back then. He was just a small employee in my father's company. I took a liking to him at first sight and directly got the marriage certificate with him without telling my family. After having a child, my family reluctantly agreed to this marriage. Victor also succeeded in starting his business by relying on the power of my family. In the past 2 years, my father was preparing to retire and wanted to merge the two companies into one. Relying on our trust in him, Victor felt that he had great power in his hands and became more and more arrogant. Sometimes he even didn't take me seriously. I used to devote myself wholeheartedly to Toby and ignored this point, but now it seems that everything has left traces. When I saw the girl's injuries all over her body, my heart was broken. In my previous life, I had always been educating Toby to become a good person. When he was naughty as a child, I would correct him immediately. But every time I was interrupted. However, this matter today is not over yet. In the evening, as soon as we got home, Hannah started crying. What should we do? That damned man just won't let our Zhuangzhuang go. Who knows if her daughter is a delinquent girl and got those injuries from fighting outside by herself. I think they're deliberately blackmailing us. What if something happens to our Zhuangzhuang? Cecilia, you must think of a way. If it really doesn't work, let the old man ask if he knows anyone. She nervously grabbed Victor's arm. I stood aside watching the scene and just found it funny. Zhuangzhuang is my son. Of course I'll think of a way, but you, why are you more worried than I, his biological mother? I raised my eyebrows and looked at Hannah. Before she could answer, Victor shouted on the side. Isn't it because we love Zhuangzhuang? Do you think everyone is as heartless as you? You're not worried at all. Your own son has an accident, and you still have the mood to make sarcastic remarks. I looked at them coldly and sneered. You two know exactly what this matter is like. These two people are really good at pretending. Even when they got home, they still refused to tell the truth. I don't know who they're guarding against. Toby was released and came back because of insufficient evidence. However, this matter still needs to be considered carefully. He is under 14 years old. Even if there is finally evidence proving that he really beat that girl, it's very difficult for the law to recognize it. But I still want to give it a try. Just when I was preparing to start with Toby, after all, he is still young and relatively innocent, and it's easier to get information from him. Chapter 7 Revenge. But in recent days, Hannah and Victor have been watching him too closely. Finally, I got a chance this day. I was just about to get some information from him when the doorbell rang. It was the police officer who took us away last time and also a friend of my father's. He didn't look well and was frowning tightly. Let's consider this matter closed. The other side has withdrawn the lawsuit. Thank you for your cooperation. I was immediately stunned on the spot, with an indescribable feeling in my heart. Why? Did the other side say anything? He shook his head and didn't say anything. He directly brought his daughter to withdraw the lawsuit and then rushed to transfer her to another school without stopping. I was stunned. Something was wrong. Looking at Luna's father's appearance at that time, he seemed to want to kill Toby. How could he withdraw the lawsuit so easily? But I didn't ask anything and just nodded. I stayed at home all afternoon, puzzled. I hired the detective our family usually used to investigate Luna's family. There was a result in the afternoon, but when I looked at the documents sent by the detective, I felt even more uncomfortable. At the beginning, in order to let Toby have a normal childhood like ordinary children, I, despite Victor's opposition, let him attend a public primary school. The children in that school were all from the nearby area. There were all kinds of family conditions, but most of them were from ordinary families, and only a few were extremely poor or extremely wealthy. And Luna's family was one of those with not so good family conditions. Luna's mother had been bedridden for years, and the whole family relied on her father's work alone. When this happened, her father wanted to seek justice for his daughter at the first time but encountered obstacles everywhere. Finally, there was a glimmer of hope, but Luna's mother fell ill again. She had a cerebral infarction and needed a lot of money for treatment. If I guessed correctly, Victor offered timely help. Sure enough, in the evening, when I pretended to be asleep, those two couldn't wait to reveal their true nature immediately. I turned on the surveillance in the study, and the two were chatting enthusiastically inside. They even talked about Toby's matter. Do you think this 500,000 yuan can shut them up? I told him to behave himself long ago, but he just wouldn't listen. Now it's okay. He only knows to be obedient after paying the price. I just hope it won't leave a psychological shadow on our son. Hannah said cautiously, with a fierce look in her eyes. I don't know how many times they had done such things right under my nose. In the past, I believed them wholeheartedly. I was so stupid that they could do whatever they wanted above my head. Now that I've got conclusive evidence, I can finally stop putting up with all this. And I will definitely give Luna's family an explanation for his act of beating others. Calculating the time, it's almost the time when they tampered with my car and I died an unnatural death. I can't just sit around and wait for death anymore. The next day, I found a lawyer and drafted a divorce agreement. I didn't want to bother my parents about this matter for the time being. The two old people are traveling around the world outside the city, and I don't want them to worry about me anymore. The divorce agreement was simple. Victor would leave the house empty-handed. After all, everything he had was given by me. I don't think this requirement is excessive. I mailed the divorce agreement to him on the same day. Then I went to my father's company. I hadn't been to the company for a long time. Fortunately, the receptionist still remembered me. I went upstairs smoothly. Now my father's company is all managed by the deputy general manager. We were planning to merge the two companies in a while, but now it's not necessary anymore. After all, Victor is not good at running a company. He's as stubborn as a mule and has no business acumen and can't take on big things. If it hadn't been for my father's help over the years, his company would have gone bankrupt long ago. The first thing I did when I found the general manager was to cut off the funds for his company. Chapter 8 Threat: Our company won't support him anymore in the future. It's just that it's a bit troublesome to go through the procedures and it will take some time. In the evening, I went directly back to the house I bought before marriage. I had someone clean it during the day, and it's okay to live in. The first day after leaving Victor was really comfortable. However, just when I was about to go to sleep, Victor called. Cecilia, what do you mean? You want to divorce me? Do you know that your family's company depends on me in the future? Why do you want to divorce me? Hearing Victor's angry roar on the other end of the phone, I just found it funny. I really don't know where he got the confidence to talk to me like this. Come back quickly. I tell you that I will never agree to the divorce. After saying that, he hung up the phone with a snap. Who on earth gave him the courage? Did he think that he had already emptied me of all my power over the years? My father's company hasn't fallen into his hands yet, and he dares to order me around. After hanging up the phone, I called the manager again and asked him to speed up. I want to see the result tomorrow. That night, I didn't sleep well. I dreamed all night that Victor was shouting at me. Obviously, it wasn't like this when we got married. He was so considerate and was an extremely gentle husband. How could he become like this? I had nightmares all night, and all of them were about the moment of the car accident in my previous life. When I woke up, my forehead was covered with sweat. In the morning, I received another call from Victor, and his words were full of warnings. But when he called again at noon, he seemed like a different person. Cecilia, what are you doing? Even a one-day marriage should be remembered with gratitude for 100 days. There's no need to be so heartless, right? I heard from the people in the company that all this was under your instruction. You know our small company can't afford such disruptions. What does it have to do with me? I immediately interrupted him, a bit impatient. Of course it has something to do with you. This is our company. We've managed it with great effort. Can you bear to see it go bankrupt? Yes, it's now on the verge of collapse and costing more money. You might as well just declare bankruptcy directly, and you can lose less money that way. After saying that, I hung up the phone directly. He was trying to morally blackmail me, but I didn't fall for that at all. I wanted to see how many days his shabby little company could survive without the capital injection from my father's company. In these days, I gradually took over the business of my father's company. Fortunately, I was familiar with it before, so I got the hang of it quickly. Meanwhile, I urged Victor to sign the divorce agreement as soon as possible. He had been very busy these days, running around to attract investments. Unfortunately, now that my attitude was clear, few companies in the industry would go against my family. He was so anxious that he called me every day, but I hung up every time he called. At the same time, Toby didn't give him any peace of mind either. On this day, Toby's class teacher called me. Hello, Toby's mother. Well, we couldn't get through to Toby's father's mobile phone. Could you please see if you have time to come to the school? I didn't say anything and hung up the phone, then went straight to the school. When I arrived at the school, I found that Toby had knocked out a male classmate's front tooth. I immediately slapped Toby. Can't you just stop causing trouble? Hurry up and apologize to your classmate. After I said that, I saw the hatred in Toby's eyes as he stared at me burst out immediately. The parents of his classmate were all shocked beside them. After all, I had played a big part in spoiling Toby like this. Why did you hit me? You're not my mother. I don't want you. You abandoned me and Dad. I don't want you anymore. Go away. Chapter 9 Apology. As he said this, he ran out. I looked in the direction he ran and felt a bit sad in my heart. If there's anything in the future, just contact his father. This matter can be big or small. I suggest you call the police. They seemed to be shocked by my words, with their mouths wide open and not saying a word. I sighed and walked out with my bag. Later, I learned that the reason Toby fought was that the other kid pointed at Toby and said that I didn't want him anymore, that Victor would live with someone else in the future, and that no one would want him anymore, so he would become an orphan. Toby got angry when he heard that, and then the two fought. However, I didn't feel sorry for him at all now. He deserved all this. It was also as he wished. From now on, he could call Hannah mother. After going out, I didn't look for Toby and went straight home. On the way home, I received a call from Victor saying that Toby was missing. He's missing. Why are you calling me? Call Hannah. Don't you know whose child he is? After I said that, there was a pause on the other end of the phone. What do you mean by that? Zhuangzhuang has called you mother since he was a child. Well, now that the child is lost, you're just shirking responsibility, right? Stop pretending. This child isn't mine at all. I've raised this bastard born by you and Hannah for so many years, and that's enough. Don't come and call me randomly in the future. After hanging up the phone, I felt much more comfortable. Victor's company was getting worse and worse, but he was still holding on stubbornly and refused to declare bankruptcy no matter what. On this day, just after I got off work, I saw him driving to find me. His face was unshaven, and his clothes were in a mess. As soon as he saw me, he started crying. Honey, let's not get divorced, okay? I was stupid before. It was my fault. I was wrong. Now I've driven those two people away. Let's go home, okay? He grabbed my arm and pulled it so hard that it hurt. Honey, I really know I'm wrong. Could you please ask Dad for me? Without this company, I'll really die. This is everything to me. You know how hard I've worked for it. Don't you want a child? Let's have another one, okay? At this, I pushed him away with all my strength. Then I slapped him directly. Now you want to have a child with me. Did you ever think of this day when you were cheating outside? He still had a glimmer of hope for me in his heart. He thought that based on our feelings, I definitely wouldn't bear to see his company go bankrupt in the end. But he was wrong. I not only wanted his company to go bankrupt, but I also wanted to ruin him completely. I called the company security guards to carry him away and quickly got in the car and left. The next day, Victor somehow found out where I lived and came directly to my home. Because just this morning, I received internal news that his company was completely doomed and was about to be declared bankrupt compulsorily. As soon as he saw me, he knelt down in front of me. Honey, I know I'm wrong. Lend me some money, please. I promise I'll pay you back in the future. I just need it for a turnover. You can't just leave me in the lurch. I was startled by his move. Then I immediately calmed down. If you want Dad to allocate funds for you, it's okay. Let's get divorced. Once you sign the papers, your company will come back to life immediately. Victor hesitated for a moment, as if thinking about how credible my words were. I directly picked up the phone and called the manager, asking him to prepare the money. Hearing this, Victor was a bit tempted. He thought about it for a while. Okay, let's get divorced. Chapter 10. The ending. I didn't want any of his things. After getting the divorce certificate, I immediately transferred a sum of money to him. Dad's company has started a new project recently. This is all the spare money we have for now, and I've given it all to you. It should last for a while. Thank you. I didn't expect that you're the only one I can rely on in the end. Although we're divorced, our feelings are still there. When my company gets better, let's remarry, okay? I felt disgusted and got in the car and left directly. The house I lived in was bought by me before marriage and was registered under my name. Now I was going to take it back. What I didn't expect was that Hannah and her son were still living here. I took some people into the house and started packing up their things and threw all their stuff out. What are you doing? Don't touch them. Do you know this is Victor's house? This is his son. Who gave you the right to move these things? Hannah tried to stop them like a madwoman, but unfortunately, no one listened to her. Toby was a bit afraid of me since I slapped him last time. Mom, what are you doing? Are you here to take me away? He was timid. I heard that Victor hadn't taken care of them these days, didn't give them any money, and they had lived a hard life for a few days. Then I had an idea. After thinking for a moment, I took Toby to the hospital and found Luna's mother's hospital bed. I watched little Luna turning her mother's body over, and a pang of sadness welled up in my heart. When Luna's father came back from outside and saw Toby, he was very angry and pushed us to make us leave. Toby glanced at me. I put on a cold face and made him kneel down. Mom, what are you doing? I directly kicked Toby in the back of his knee and then pressed down on his shoulders. Apologize. I won't. He began to struggle. I pinned him down firmly, while Luna's father watched coldly from the side. Before long, Toby compromised and began to apologize. Until later, when Luna's father waved his hand, I bowed and then left. However, I knew that Toby was just putting on an act. He was as good at acting as his father. Mom, it's okay now, right? You should take me to have a big meal now. His casual and carefree appearance made me so angry. I'm not your mom. Your Grace is your dear mom. Don't call me mom. I find it disgusting. After saying that, I left him behind and drove away by myself. Just when I thought that things had finally come to an end, there was also some good news. My biological child was found. This was something I had been investigating since I was just reborn. Fortunately, my efforts hadn't been in vain. My biological daughter was swapped in the hospital. At that time, the doctors and nurses all knew that I had given birth to a daughter. However, later, fearing that the hospital would be held responsible and with Victor having given them money, no one said a word about it. Now that the truth had come to light, they all received their punishments. I also sued Victor and Hannah. With so many witnesses, the two of them couldn't defend themselves. In court, Hannah knelt down in front of me on the spot. She begged me to raise Toby until he grew up. I directly refused. At the same time, Victor's company went completely bankrupt. The huge debts made him end up in prison for a long time. He was not good at managing the company, and that bit of funds was just a drop in the bucket. The day when I went to the orphanage to pick up my daughter back was sunny. And that day was also the time when Toby entered the orphanage. My daughter is very well behaved and looks a lot like me. My parents also like her very much. I give her the best of everything in the world to make up for what she had missed, while Toby was always trying to be sly and lazy in the orphanage. Later, I heard that he wanted to come out to find me. When crossing the road, he didn't pay attention to the traffic and was hit by a car and flew into the air. He became disabled. At that time, the orphanage called me. I couldn't bear it and still gave them a sum of money. It could also be considered as me accumulating good deeds for my daughter. The end.